Okay, so we're going to call, what was it again? The load request. Load request, and again here it tells you that this is going to be an NSURL request. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the end bracket in here so we don't forget. And we're going to have to do a bracket around this to call that. So what we'll do here is do an NSURL request. And again, you drill down into the API reference. And one thing that you can do here is call a class method called request with URL. Okay, so we're going to call the NSURL request, and we're going to do a request with URL, and it's going to require an NSURL URL type. Okay, fine. Go ahead and bracket that, and then we're going to say, all right. Jump to request with URL, and it's going to be an NSURL type, the URL. All right. NSURL with string is the first thing that I suggest. Now, the URL with string isn't NSURL. Just click on that, and URL with string is another class method you call on NSURL, and you type in your HTTP address in here. Okay. Now, this is kind of, and again, what I would recommend you do is on each one of these items, do an API, look up the API reference and read on it and see if this can make sense to you. When you first look at this, you're kind of going, whoa, why didn't Apple just have a simpler method that you can call on a UI web view to say load URL with string and just use this? It would seem simpler instead of having it this part of a nested. I guess a URL with string returns an NSURL, which a request with URL requires, or an NSURL requires, that you have to give to a load request. I mean, it's kind of silly, but these are one of the methods that you may want to copy and keep in your general Xcode development cheat sheet. So I have one of those cheat sheets, and there's like these little nice to knows that are good, and I wrote this down. So one of my lessons, there's a lot of notes that I have here, and one of them is this loading a web page. Okay, so adding a web view into a view, define your IB outlet. So I basically you define the IB outlet, and then you just can copy and paste this particular code into, so you don't have to remember this whole long thing. The other thing is that in object-oriented programming, there's a book by Stephen Cohen, Programming in Objective-C 2.0, where he talks about the define method, and where you can define, for example, a long string like that and input that in your code. So I would like to get your thoughts about maybe using something like that instead of using this. But would that make your code more usable or less usable? I'd be curious about what people think about that. Anyway, so now we have this awake from nib, and basically what this says is the view controller. This is basically a delegate function or method that basically says, hey, execute this once you loaded your nib into your view. And So we're going to do a Command B to save and compile this. And now we do another Command Shift R, and then Command R to run our program and to see if we load our web page. And we didn't. Okay. See what? Oh yeah, this doesn't put in www.carticipate.com. And we don't have to put the www in there, so maybe we just put in carticipate.com. Build, Command Shift R. And there it is. All right, we loaded our web page, and it's all good. All right, so and here's our map view, but there's no back and forwards, and we'll cover that on another topic. But that basically concludes the web page. The other thing I also wanted to show you real quick is one of the things that you can do that for debugging is you can put in little things like nslog and put some kind of any kind of statement in here. Okay, so here we call the web page load request. In the awake from nib method. All right, so I control Command B on this. Oops. Oh. Semicolon, of course. Command B, Command Shift R. And notice when you then run your program, you'll see that this message gets called in your debugger console. So this is a good debug method. You can place these NSLogs all over in your code. So if something's not working, you can place that in there, kind of see, okay, what gets called, what doesn't, and because sometimes, you know, a method that never gets called, and you scratch your head, why does that not happen? But that concludes our tutorial. I hope you liked it. It was helpful. If you have any questions, please comment. I will be responsive. And any other thoughts or ideas that you have, I would greatly appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon. Happy carticipation.